purpose of this video is to visually demonstrate techniques and practices which we have found helpful in reconditioning and maintaining rapid air feeds. There are many different sequences that can be used, but we have found that the steps used in this video are useful in learning to do the job easily and efficiently. It will be easier to follow the instructions in this video if you place an exploded parts list in a suitable location for quick reference purposes. A parts list is included with the Rapid Air O-ring kit and with a Rapid Air repair kit. The Rapid Air O-ring kit contains all of the O-rings needed for the repair of the particular model designated. The Rapid Air repair kit contains all of the O-rings, wiper seal, snap rings, and the appropriate pilot-operated valve and poppet. We recommend that one of these kits be available before beginning any reconditioning of a Rapid Air air feed. We have found the following tools to be helpful for an efficient disassembly of Rapid Air air feeds: a hex wrench and key set, internal and external snap ring pliers, a small sharp bent hook for removal of O-rings, a small soft-faced hammer, Rapid Air cartridge removal tool, a selection of fine grit sandpaper, screwdriver, and a small amount of thin grease. Before any disassembly is performed, the feed must be disconnected from any air supply to allow free movement of the feed during disassembly. Remove all connecting hoses. Begin disassembly by removing the snap ring holding in the actuator valve. And pull the actuator valve from its socket. Next, remove the stop block clamps by removing the screws holding in the clamps. There are 2 screws on each side of the feed. You may have to tap the screws. You may have to tap the stop block clamps in order to remove them from the stop block. Remove the stop block from the feed. To complete the removal of the guide rails, take out the screw which holds each guide rail in place. It may be necessary to tap the guide rail in order to remove it from the main body. It is now a simple job to remove the slide block main piston subassembly by removing the snap ring holding the parts to the main body. After removal of the snap ring, pull the main piston and the main body by pulling on the slide block. If the feed has cushion pistons, take them out by removing the snap ring holding them in place. Pull up at the end of the cushion piston. And pull the pistons out of the main body. Then push the pistons out of the retainer. Now loosen and remove the nuts holding the stock clamp to the stock clamp pistons. And remove the stock clamp. Rotation of these parts is prevented by the square shoulder on the main piston and the flat sides of the stock clamp. Repeat this process for the nuts on the feed clamp. When the clamps are removed, notice the position of the height adjustment washers. Also, set the feed clamp springs aside for when removing the feed clamp. Next, remove the snap rings holding the stock piston retainers in the main body. Then pull the pistons from the main body along with the retainers. Disassemble the retainers from the pistons and push the pistons out of the bottom of the slide block. The cartridge and control tube are removed from the end of the main body opposite the main piston. Remove the snap rings holding these parts in position. Next, remove the cartridge retainer by pulling the knob provided for this purpose. Do the same with the control tube. It is important to remove the snap ring that is located in the main body near the bottom of the cavity for the control tube. This will allow removal of the main piston sleeve. Removal of the cartridge is facilitated by the use of a cartridge pulling tool available through Rapid Air distributors. Remove the O-rings from all main body cavities. A bent hook will make this job much easier. Take the slide block and main piston assembly and remove the set screw located on the bottom of the slide block. Next, loosen and remove the main cushion bolt. Now slide the main piston through the slide block far enough to expose the flats on the shaft retainer. Loosen the shaft retainer by using 2 wrenches on the flats of the main piston. The main piston will now pull to the slide block. Remove the snap ring, the retainer, and the wiper seal from the main piston. Then remove the O-rings from the inside and outside of the main piston retainer, as long as the main piston head and the inside of the main piston head. Next, remove all of the O-rings from the inside of the slide block, top and bottom. Next, remove all of the O-rings from the outside of the cartridge. Then push out the pilot operator valve and pop it from the bottom of the cartridge. Then remove all the O-rings from the pilot operator valve. Next, moving over to the actuator valve, remove the snap ring that holds in the stem and the cap, and separate the stem from the cap. Then remove the quad ring, bring over the control tube, and remove both O-rings on the head. Now remove the O-ring from the outside and the quad ring on the inside of the main piston retainer. Then locate both cushion piston retainers and remove the O-ring on the outside and on the inside. Then wash all parts with an appropriate cleaner and degrease and then inspect. Check all polished parts for scratches, dents, or nicks. Use fine emery cloth to smooth and polish all parts. If there are deep gouges, it may be necessary to order new replacement parts to maximize the O-ring life. Check the control tube. Check the small and large diameters of the feed clamp and stock clamp pistons. Inspect the entire length of the main piston shaft. Inspect the inside of the main piston sleeve for deep scratches. Polish if necessary and replace the sleeve if it has heavy rust or scratches. Also, check the inside of the cartridge for wear. Check the main body and slide block wear plates. Replace these parts if they are badly worn or have too many scratches. Inspect the guide rail slots in the slide block. If these slots are worn more than 15 thousandths of an inch, the slide block should be replaced. Proper clearance is between 4 thousandths and 10 thousandths inches. Check the underside of the feed clamp and stock clamp surfaces. Burrs on the strip stock being fed will often gouge the surface. Usually, these surfaces can be smoothed so that they are functional, but if the parts are badly worn, they should be replaced. Check for general condition of the stop block. Check the stop block clamp slots for wear, as well as the guide rail slots. Check to see if the rear cushion piston will slide easily through the small hole in the rear cushion bolt. The main piston shaft retainer has a plug installed to regulate the amount of air compression resulting at the end of the retraction cycle of the feed. This plug consists of a pin in the middle of the shaft retainer with a flat to limit the airflow. If the resulting opening becomes plugged, or the rear cushion piston will not move properly. Press out the plug, clean and carefully reinstall. Check for slight amount of airflow after completion. Check the main body carefully for any damage, including broken or worn snap ring grooves, excessive O-ring groove wear, or any other physical damage. Repair any damage or replace the main body if the damage is too great to be reliably repaired. Check the cartridge hole for scratches that could cause air leakage. Lay out the O-ring kit or repair kit in a convenient order. As mentioned before, the rebuild kit includes O-rings, snap rings, wiper seals, pilot operator valve, and poppet. Basically everything is included for a normal rebuild. Lubricate the O-rings and seals and much of the inside surfaces of the feed body and parts with small amounts of white grease or number 10 white paraffin-based hydraulic oil. Be cautious that only a small amount of grease is used since excessive amounts can clog the air passages in the feed. Begin with the cushion piston subassembly. Replace the O-rings on the inside and outside of each retainer. Replace the O-rings on the inside of the main body. Lubricate and install the piston with the retainer. And install the retainer into the main body, followed by the snap ring with the flat side facing upwards. Repeat this process with both retainers. Replace the O-rings on the inside and outside of the main piston. Replace the sleeve O-ring and slide the sleeve into the main body. Paying special attention to the dowel indicator in the back of the main body. Line the notch up on the sleeve with the pin when installing and turn the sleeve back and forth slightly to make sure the pin is engaged. On the top of the main body, on the wear plate side, replace the O-rings in the stock clamp piston cavities. Then replace the O-rings on the stock clamp piston retainers, inside and outside. Lubricate the inside O-ring before installing on the stock clamp piston. Make sure to lubricate the internal O-ring and the external O-ring as long as the stock clamp piston. Install both sides. Then affix with a snap ring. Position the flats on the stock clamp pistons with the slots on the stock clamp. Install the clamp, followed by the washers in their original position. Then install stock clamp nuts and tighten. Now turn the feed to the control tube and cartridge end. Install the lower snap ring. Replace the O-rings in the control tube head. Lubricate and install into the main body. Use a snap ring with the flat side facing upwards to hold the whole assembly into place. The cartridge has 4 O-rings on the outside diameter. Put these in place. Next, lightly lubricate the inside of the cartridge. Take the pilot operator valve and install both O-rings. Next, install the poppet with the grooved end facing downwards. Then install the pilot operator valve with the small end downwards. Then take the cartridge installation tool and tighten it onto the cartridge. Lubricate all 4 O-rings before installation, and with a gentle twisting motion, install the cartridge. Next, take the pilot operator valve retainer and install the O-ring. Press it gently into the cartridge and affix the entire assembly with a snap ring facing upwards. On the main piston side of the slide block, install the O-ring in the narrow O-ring groove in the main piston cavity. In this cavity, there are 2 grooves. The top groove and the narrower of the 2 is where the O-ring goes. Deeper in the cavity, there is a much larger groove that is an air passage which does not get an O-ring. Take the feed clamp pistons and press them into the slide block. Turn the slide block over and square up the pistons with a feed clamp. Next, install the springs into the counterbore. Assemble the feed clamp, making sure that the springs are in the counterbore. Install the washers, and then the nuts, and tighten up the entire assembly. Next, take the main piston assembly and make sure that there is an O-ring installed on the outside and inside of the main piston head. Then take the main piston retainer and install a quad ring on the inside and an O-ring on the outside, and slide over the main piston shaft. Next, install the wiper seal with a sealing edge facing upwards, followed by the snap ring with a flat side facing outwards. The next step is to install the main piston assembly into the slide block. Now push the main piston shaft through the slide block, twisting slightly, not to damage the O-ring. Then take the shaft retainer and install. Then push the assembly back into the slide block and install the cushion bolt. Install the O-ring around the diameter of the cushion piston and slide it into the cushion bolt. Make sure the parts move freely. Then lightly grease the threads on the outside to ensure that no seizing occurs. Then install to the slide block and tighten up the entire assembly. At this point, remember to install the nylon plug and to tighten the set screw on the bottom of the slide block. Now, lightly lubricate the main piston head, control tube, and main piston cavity. Install the main piston into the main body by pushing on it lightly until the retainers seat. We use what we call a half moon. This is a piece of metal that we have fabricated in-house to help push the retainers down into the body. You could also use a small punch or screwdriver to seat the retainer. Then install the snap ring. Next, install the guide rails. Then install the stop block and clamps. Turn the feet over and do the other side. Now reassemble the main actuation valve, beginning with the quad ring. Then install both snap rings that retain the cap. Then install the cap. Make sure both flats of the snap rings face each other. Gently push the head into the cap. And with a snap, the assembly is completed. Install an O-ring on the inside of the actuation valve cavity at the first step in the main body. Then place the actuator valve into the main body and affix the whole assembly with a snap ring. Now double check the security of this snap ring by pulling outwards on the actuator valve. Also, double check all other snap rings, nuts, and bolts for security. Double check all snap rings, nuts, and bolts. Then put air to the feed and check for leaks. Using the adjusting screw, check the overall function of the feed, both fast and slow. If there are no problems, it has been a successful rebuild.